At this point, we're starting the DD6 gear set installation. The first step is really to go back over to the left side, install the new main drive gear bearing, the new main drive gear retaining ring, and then the new pawl seal over on the left side. So all of that's done right now. What I need to do is draw the main drive gear through the main drive gear bearing with the tool A. I want to point out something on the Baker 6-speed DD6 as well as the OD6 features a floating magnet. Typically on a Harley transmission there's a very small magnet on the end of the drain screw. In typical Baker fashion, we felt that a bigger magnet is better, overkill is better, more is better. And so our magnet is much larger, and it's mounted on the inside of the trap door. And one thing to note is that it does float on the screw by design. So we've had calls before, people say, you know, the screw that retains the magnet is not seated all the way. Well, that's not the case. It's by design. It allows the magnet to float up and down about 1/4 of an inch. We're going to draw the DD6 main drive gear bearing through the left side here with the tool A components. Feed this through the right side to the left. Be very careful with the threads of the draw screw to make sure they don't harm this, this seal on the end of the main drive gear. Okay, there's a 3/4 inch nut here, and the head of the drawbar screw is 3/4 as well. So I'm going to grab a couple 3/4 inch wrenches here. Whenever using these installation tools or removal tools, you encounter a lot of friction or force that doesn't really make sense. Back away from the job, take a look at what's going on. You know, try to figure out if there's an interference or some reason. You know, normal operation of these installation or removal tools doesn't require a whole lot of effort, with the exception of the inner primary bearing race removal tool. So it feels like it's home. I'm going to go ahead and remove the tool. Okay, I see the full splines. These are the splines that the drive pulley mounts to. I see all those splines through the inside of the bearing, and so that sucker looks like it's pulled to seat. While I'm over on this side, I'm going to go ahead and apply a generous amount of tranny lube to this seal on the end of the main drive gear, as well as this bearing. This outside bearing here being located so far from the sump oil that resides in the tranny case, this outside bearing needs a little lube out of the chute to effectively prime the pump of oil circulating through it. I'm going to go ahead and install the ratchet pawl that comes with the kit. When I removed the 5-speed transmission, I took this little spring and kind of flipped it aside. That allowed me to flip that pawl back like that. I advise that you go ahead and do that at this point. It'll allow easy installation of the shift drum and pillow block assembly. Slide it through like so. You hear it go snap. It's home. I'm going to set it there so that it's staged for the next step in the installation from the right side. I'm going to install the new washer supplied with the kit and the new 7/16 external retaining ring. It's a little retaining ring, but that's really all that's required. Just confirm that it snaps shut and that it's installed. Looks good. I removed the stock non-adjustable centering pin when I removed the 5-speed. With the DD6 Builder's Kit, we supply an eccentric adjusting screw that allows you a little more adjustability to dial in your shift quality. You can see what happens when I install the adjustment screw. It's changing the location of the ratchet pawl, thereby changing its relationship to the pins on the end of the drum. It just allows you to dial in your shift quality a lot better. Okay, the case is all prepped. I have the main drive gear there in place. I have the ratchet pawl installed. Having both of those in place prior to feeding the gear set through is necessary. A trick I use to avoid these clutch splines on the main shaft from cutting the seal on the end of the main drive gear as you feed the gear set through is to wrap this with electrical tape. I'm going to hang the gasket provided with the kit on the door dowels here. Tuck it down, make sure it's home. I'll grab the gear set and I'm going to gingerly slide it through the main drive gear, and I'm going to slide it up to the point where it's just kind of sitting on the door dowels. Now you may find that you have to rotate the gear set a little bit to get the main drive gear to mesh with the mating countershaft gear. With the gear set in place, right up next to the door dowels, I'm going to take the dead blow hammer and tap the trap door home. Be careful never to hit the end of the shafts with the dead blow, but tapping it on the side of the door is perfectly fine. You'll hear the audible pitch of the blows change when that door hits the gasket. And with that, we're going to install the screws that retain the door to the case. I recommend using blue Loctite on the screws. We're going to reinstall the stock exhaust bracket. Go ahead and put blue Loctite on these. Once again, I like to tighten all screws during the assembly process by hand, just so you can feel what's going on and make sure you got good thread engagement. I want to tighten these down by hand. They can be torqued to 12 to 18 foot-pounds, and I'm going to go ahead and install the top two 1/4-20 screws using blue Loctite as well. With the gear set in place, one of the first things I'm going to do is make sure it rotates and spins freely. Occasionally, on the inside of the case, above the first gear on the countershaft, some clearancing is required on the case. Harley cases, the castings are very good, but the location of the walls does float, and occasionally it floats in the wrong direction, causes an interference. I'd say about 1% of the time that happens. So the way to check if you have any interference or issues is to reach in and spin that over as such, and just listen for the presence of noise, make sure everything's spinning over freely, which in this case it is, so we're good to go. The next step in the process, I'd like to go ahead and put the spacer for the speed sensor and then mount the speed sensor in the speed sensor hole. With the gear set installed, it's time to install the shift system, which includes the shift forks first and then the shift drum pillow block assembly. A couple things about the DD6 shift system. The forks are billet construction and they're hard chrome plated for wear resistance. Hard chrome is what, about 80 Rockwell C, and the gears themselves are between 58 and 62 Rockwell C. And so hard chrome for wear resistance is really the way to go for long-term durability. The other thing to mention, the shift drum pillow block assembly. Our shift drum pillow block assembly has a couple of cool features. It has a roller detent for super smooth shifting and a torsional spring. It also has a redundant neutral detent, which makes it a heck of a lot easier to find neutral. That's a pretty neat piece. Another feature, another part of this though, is that it's a fixed spindle design, which means there's a static spindle that the drum rotates on, and virtually frictionless. And so that just improves shift quality that much better when anytime you take friction out. Refer to the DD6 installation instructions for where to place the forks in the gear set, but they are labeled. This one, for example, is labeled 2MS, which means second gear on the main shaft. And so I will put that in place on the second gear. The next fork is labeled 3CS, third gear counter shaft. And put it there. The last fork is labeled 4-5 main shaft. That's for the 4-5 dog clutch. That's right here on the inside of the trap door. I'm going to feed the fork rod through the right side of the transmission case. Goes through the bores of those forks, goes into place, and at this point I'm also going to turn over, I'm going to center up these gears and just make sure everything spins over freely. Just make sure there's no binding, no goofy noises. At this point, I'm going to take the oil provided with the kit and pour some of it over the top of the forks and the gears. Rotate that around to distribute it. Pour no more than an ounce or two on there. With the ratchet pawl arm flipped out of the way, installing the shift drum pillow block assembly is pretty simple. I usually like to take the shift drum pillow block assembly and put it in neutral. You see the end stop there with the dowel hole in the end. The next bump up is neutral. We have the forks, the fork rod in place, and the next step is to put the shift drum pillow block assembly on there. You're going to have to reach around behind here and move the forks around a little bit to align them with the tracks in the drum. You pretty much know when you found it because it drops into place. And you should be able to push the pillow blocks over the case dowels with your fingers. Once again, if you find yourself having to force anything, you're doing something wrong. Stop what you're doing, back away, and take a look at what's going on. With the shift drum pillow block in place, I'm going to take the 4 retaining screws, blue Loctite on them, and install them into their respective locations. With the shift drum pillow block assembly in place, it's time to flip this ratchet pawl back over. You can see with the pawl arm flipped around, the spring in its intended position, it by design does that, and it tracks the drum as you shift through the gears, either upshifting or downshifting. On the left side, we'll perform the ratchet pawl adjustment. The ratchet pawl adjustment is performed with the transmission in third gear. So I'm going to take this lever. You know, I installed it. I installed the shift drum pillow block assembly with it in neutral, so I know it's in neutral. I'm going to upshift to second. I'm going to upshift to third. Now we're in third gear. You may find to upshift, you may have to rotate the gears to get the dogs to line up, but that's just the nature of the beast. It's in third gear now, and we're going to take a look at the location of the ratchet pawl relative to the 2 pins there. I can see that the eccentric screw needs to rotate this roughly there to center it up on the 2 pins. And so I have it in the right location, and I'm going to, I have a little blue Loctite on this retaining nut here. I'm going to hold the screw in place, and then tighten that down as so. I like the way it looks. If you do not get this ratchet pawl adjustment right, you'll find that upshifts will be nice and crisp, but downshifts may be vague, or you may miss a downshift. Or vice versa, you may find that upshifts are faulty and you miss gears, and downshifts are fine. If you have this adjustment dialed right in, both upshifts and downshifts will be crisp and nice, and you'll have no issues. I like to go ahead and install the quad seal before I install the sprocket spacer seal, so that I can really tuck it in the corner there and make sure it's home. This sprocket spacer seal, typically you can push it in with your fingers, and if you can't, you can take a dead blow hammer and just tap it around the perimeter carefully. I'm pushing it in here, and it's seated below the left side surface, so as far as I'm concerned, it's home. I'm going to take the existing sprocket spacer that came out because it was in reasonable condition. I'm going to tuck it back in like that. I'm going to take the drive pulley that came off, and to reinstall the drive pulley onto the new main drive gear, quite often you'll have to loosen the axle adjuster and pull the rear wheel forward a little bit to create some slack. I'm going to try to install this without. Sometimes you get lucky, just like that. With the pulley on, I'm going to put red Loctite on this pulley nut. I'm going to put red Loctite on the retaining plate screws, and my left side will be buttoned up. Because we're going to be using a high torque bearing in place of the stock inner primary bearing race, there's no need to install this, and I'll show you what the high torque bearing looks like here in a minute. On the left side, I have the option of reinstalling the stock inner primary bearing race, and as you saw with the stock 5-speed, it had walked into the main drive gear. The problem with it walking is if it walks into the seal on the end of the main drive gear, it'll cause that seal to leak, and then you'll have a big mess on your rear wheel. Instead of installing the stock inner bearing race, I'm going to install the high torque bearing, which we sell, and the related seal. The high torque bearing installs into the inner primary in place of the existing bearing. The seal, the high torque bearing seal, replaces the stock factory seal as well. And I'm going to go ahead and install this when the left side is put back together. Time to install the top cover. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and remove the stock neutral switch and install the neutral switch that's provided with the kit. It's the stock neutral switch is normally open, and you got to replace it with a normally closed switch, which is provided with the kit. Slide it over. I've applied blue Loctite to the top 5 screws, top cover screws. Snug works for me. Reinstall the side cover with the gasket provided with the kit. Don't forget to put your right side push rod that came off. get your stock side cover, you'll feel it kind of click onto those dowels that are part of the door assembly. With blue Loctite on the screws, tighten them down. With the side cover installed, fasteners tightened with blue Loctite, I'm going to reinstall the engine oil spout here. And that concludes the installation of the DD6 gear set into the transmission case. One thing to keep in mind, the DD6 does overdrive the primary drive. When you put the clutch and primary drive components back on, remember to install the 28-tooth comp sprocket and the new chain and the fat adjuster shoe that's provided with the kit. That'll give you years and years of good service and easy highway touring. The very first 6-speed overdrive established the template for which we develop all of our products, meaning at the time, 1998, Harleys were only available with a 5-speed transmission. We took that 5-speed, evolved it to a 6-speed overdrive, and nobody saw us coming. I mean, it was truly revolutionary, and that is the template for our product development. Is take the status quo and develop it beyond people's imagination, beyond their expectation. That's what we do. Stop! No! Let this just go away from you! When I design something, I design it in 2D. That's considered archaic by modern terms. What I do is take a two-dimensional design, a two-dimensional concept, and give it to one of my designers, and they translate my vision into a solid model.
If we see a product out there we believe that we can make a great improvement on, we're going to attack it.
When it comes down to it, we're all here for the same reason, and that's to improve the American motorcycle industry and make the best drivetrains out there.
Just so you understand the template of how we develop a new product is we'll come up with an idea, we'll make 1 or 2 prototypes, validate that we like it, we'll take and make 10 more prototypes, do some testing, do some destructive testing, and when we feel that the product is ready for launch, we will take that design, get the blueprints together, we'll send them out for quote. Any part in a Baker Drivetrain product that has a Baker Drivetrain blueprint is only made in America, and it'll be that way until they put me in the dirt.